What's another year, 1979? Britain rang in 1979 under a thick blanket of snow, rubbish and general misery. The winter of discontent was in full swing, with strikes everywhere and bin bags piling up so high you could have sledged down them. Hospitals, schools and even grave diggers were on strike, which really set the tone. On the radio, village people encouraging everyone to visit their local YMCA, which felt ironic given half the country couldn't get to work. Over at Top of the Pops, disco still ruled, flares still flapped, and nobody suspected punk was about to get a bit mainstream. February arrived, the snow kept falling, tempers stayed short, and Britain collectively wondered if the 1970s would ever actually end. Blondie were climbing the charts with Heart of Glass, proving punk could be danceable and confusing everyone in the process. Over at the Pictures, Grease was still pulling in crowds, reminding Britain that Americans apparently never had to worry about inflation or power cuts. We were off down to the toy shop to get a Stretch Armstrong, who was more flexible than the British economy at this point. March was when things got properly serious. James Callaghan lost a vote of no confidence by one single vote, which is the political equivalent of tripping over the last step. Pop fans were busy arguing whether the Bee Gees had finally overdone it on the high-pitched voices, whilst madness popped up with the Prince skanking their way into British hearts and wardrobes. Meanwhile, kids were discovering speak and spell, learning to spell words incorrectly, but confidently. April brought sunshine, daffodils, and a general sense that something big was coming. Public Enemy #1 was inflation, but the real plot twist was still a few weeks away. Alien terrified audiences with chest-bursting horror, proving space was not, in fact, friendly. On the charts, Gloria Gaynor was telling everyone she would survive, which Britain took as a challenge. Toys were still aggressively plastic, colourful and indestructible, unlike most household appliances. May 1979 is when Margaret Thatcher became Prime Minister, becoming Britain's first female PM and instantly dividing the nation into camps that are still arguing now. The Boomtown Rats hit #1 with I Don't Like Mondays, based on a school shooting. Frankly, a weird thing to bop along to. You couldn't move for Space Invaders. They were invading pubs, arcades, and chip shops nationwide. June 1979, the Jam were everywhere. Angry, stylish, and very British. Paul Weller glared his way into bedrooms up and down the country with the other two. Cinema queues were massive for the Muppet movie, giving everyone a much-needed emotional break. Meanwhile, the sun appeared briefly, causing nationwide confusion. Every house had a box of Lego. It was a household staple, like washing up liquid, flour or sugar. By the time summer finally showed up, Britain immediately forgot all the previous misery. The UK charts were a battlefield between disco diehards and new wave upstarts. But the ELO proved orchestras and rock could coexist without any violence. Kids were outside riding bikes with no helmets, no water bottles, and no adult supervision. A simpler, more dangerous time. Health and safety? Pah! August meant Butlins or Pontins or sitting in traffic on the A1. People still went to seaside towns and filled them with knotted hankies, sunburn and chip forks. The movie The Life of Brian caused outrage before anyone had even seen it. Britain loves being offended preemptively. It would go on to become a national treasure. Action Man was still being thrown off garden sheds, and Larry Grayson was shutting that door.
Shut that door.
What a gay day. September and back to reality. Soggy school uniforms, crushing realisation that summer was over, and parents rejoicing. The Police dominated the charts with Message in a Bottle. Ooh, look, it's on green vinyl. TV schedules returned and Britain gathered for nationwide Tomorrow's World and whatever light entertainment Michael Parkinson had booked for that particular week. Emu, anybody? October and the dark draws in. Halloween was a thing that nobody really celebrated yet in the UK, and the creeping suspicion that Christmas would involve socks again was in the air. Pink Floyd's The Wall loomed large, even if you didn't fully understand it, and to be honest, still don't. Punk was mellowing, disco was wobbling, kids played Dungeons and Dragons, and their parents had no idea. Into a damp, dark November. Carry On Emmanuel somehow was a thing. On the charts, The Pretenders and Gary Newman were pushing British music into colder, sharper territory. Cars sounded like the future, and it was. Into December and toy catalogues arrived, sparking the annual tradition of circling things you absolutely wouldn't get. And the year and the decade closed with tinsel, tension, and turkey. And Pink Floyd hit number one with Another Brick in the Wall, a children's choir singing about hating school. Festive. The two Ronnies ruled Christmas TV, and Morecambe and Wise were deeply missed. Britain looked ahead nervously to the 1980s, unaware that leg warmers, shoulder pads, and Rubik's Cubes were waiting just around the corner. The end of the 70s, and the calm before one hell of a noisy neon decade.